Hi everyone and welcome back. Today's video is going to be another recent reads video, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the books I've read recently, or really thereabouts. The first book I'm going to mention is How Proust Can Change Your Life by Alain de Botton. This book was not what I expected it to be. I actually put off reading this book for so long. I think it's been about 2 years since I actually purchased this book, because it was in that video where I visited bookshops around Glasgow. So yeah, and that has been about 2 years. So I actually put off reading this for a long time, like this year, because I was reading another self-help book, and I thought like this was a self-help book, so I didn't want to be reading two at the same time. As it stands, I could have read this alongside that, because whilst this is kind of a self-help book, it's really a book that's a love letter to Proust, so I could have just been reading it and finding out more about Proust and why Alain de Botton found him amazing, rather than picking it up as a book that was self-help and was going to help me. I feel like this book is the kind of book that you would hope someone would write about you one day, if you had like dedicated your life to doing a piece of work, and you know, you hope that someone found you interesting enough that they managed to write a book about you, because this is what this is. This feels like Alain de Botton went to his publishers and was like, right, I really like this guy, I think his lessons are so good, I've learned a lot from him, I just want to write a book about him, because he's so successful and other things. They were just like, you know what, you write that book. This is exactly what this book feels like. And by the way, I gave this book I think 3 out of 5 stars. I actually really enjoyed it. I just think it's a really funny book. Like the way it's written, it just reads like a love letter to Proust. So what Alain de Botton does is basically go through Proust's life, like his writing, things he might have written in newspapers, things that his friends have said about him, and he basically uses this to apply this to sort of our life lessons and what Proust can teach us about certain things. It's an interesting book because Proust is quite an eccentric character. He's quite odd, but he's also very knowledgeable. But what Alain de Botton does is split them into chapters, so that the chapters read... what do the chapters read? How to love life today, how to read for yourself, how to be a good friend, how to open your eyes, how to be happy in love, and there's many others like it. And basically, under these chapters, he basically tells us about like, he relates this back to Proust basically. So it's how to be happy in love, but it's what Proust thought, as opposed to what I thought was a self-help book. I don't know, like it is a self-help book, but it isn't. Like it's basically Proust's thoughts about all of these things. I guess what I mean by when I say it's self-helpy, it's more, this is what Proust thought about this, and this is sort of what he did, and I guess this is how it may also help you. So you can definitely take some life lessons from it, but I don't think that's really the aim of this book. The aim of this book is to talk about Proust and his like unique and perhaps also polarizing views on something. The book does give you a background about Proust, so you find out about his family life. He was actually quite the spoiled man. I think he didn't move out of his house until he was like 30 or something, but like he was very mollycoddled by his mother, who really like didn't want him to do anything. She would just like dote on him. His dad, I believe, was a surgeon or just very high up in the medical industry, and so was his brother. I feel like maybe his brother was a surgeon and his dad was something else, but either way, his dad and brother both had medical backgrounds, and Proust just really didn't do anything. I think for a bit he worked in a library, but then like he couldn't be bothered to go to that, so then he just started like feigning illness, and then like basically they fired him after a year, and he just never really had a job after that. A lot of his time was dedicated to writing, and it's just inconceivable to me that someone could live a life like that now. But perhaps they do, because you know there are still people with tons of money, but yeah, he is a very odd and eccentric character, but because his life is just so different to, like, I don't even want to say to now, it seemed it was so different to other people of his time as well. I think he does make for an interesting person to study. One of the things that Alain de Botton highlights in this is his book In Search of Lost Time. I think it's a very lengthy book, and I think maybe he wrote some other things but weren't as long as that. So I think it was just about trying to find out how an author who wrote a book that he really enjoyed lived his life. And I guess if you decide to study an author and a book that you really like, you come across other gems about them, and then you want to put that in a book. So yeah, one of my favourite chapters from this book actually was How to Be a Good Friend, because I felt like me and Proust felt the same about like friendships. But to give you an example of how this book is sort of laid out, he starts with a chapter by saying, what did his friends think of him? He had a great number of them, and after his death, many were moved to publish accounts of what it had been like to know him. And then it goes on to say some other stuff, and it says, their accounts tell us that he was generous. And then there's a paragraph inserted from one of his friends. Then it says that he liked to add 200% service charge, another paragraph, that he was not merely exorbitant, another paragraph, that he didn't talk only about himself. So this is just basically how he's trying to pull out the points that he thinks about Proust, and then back that up with actual I guess, evidence from people of that time. So it's a really nice way, like, to collate a book. And, you know, there are parts of the book that, well, actually, this is such a lie, I would say parts of the book. There's one part of the book that looks like this. I might just have to insert a picture for you. And there are some drawings in here as well. It was taken from, like, his dad's surgeon book or something like that. But the way it's pulled together is really nice. I mean, not all chapters look like that, but he's very much put in like sometimes newspaper clippings or just huge chunky paragraphs from people who knew Proust at the time. It's interesting because it's the kind of book that I actually really did enjoy, but it's not the kind of book I feel like you can just recommend to anyone, because unless they're seriously interested in Proust or they just like Alain de Botton's work, it's a weird place that it falls in his catalogue of work, so it's just really weird. If you like The School of Life, so I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning, but Alain de Botton is the founder of the channel The School of Life, and I really like their videos just for the different like perspectives they give on different schools of thought. So that's how I came across Alain de Botton, so that's why I picked this up, because I'm a little bit of a fangirl. But yeah, other than that, I don't really know how anyone else could read this book, because you might just be like, what? Why would I want to hear about, I think it was from the 19th century, I'm not even sure. Like, why would I want to hear about some guy from like the 19th century? And yeah, I just think whilst it's how Proust can change your life, a lot of this can't be applicable to the 21st century. Not in the way that he sort of liaises with people and like talks about friendships, and there is a chapter about like how I would like to put books down, but just in the manner in which Proust lived his life, I don't know that a lot of people today can relate. So for that reason, I say it can't be recommended widely to everyone, but I did enjoy this, and like I said, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I would be speaking to you about is Imperfect Arrangements by Mensah-Williams, but I have already done a full review of this book, so I will just direct you to that video. I will link it up here and I will link it down below in my description box, and yeah, you can go and check out my full review for this video. I will just touch on it very briefly just in case you're just like, what? Just tell us a little bit about the book. Imperfect Arrangements follows 3 women and also their husbands, but mainly 3 women, Teresa, Lila and Maku, and it's about their friendships and their marriage, and it takes place in Accra in Ghana, and it's just a feel-good book. I freaking love it. I just describe it as the term black girl joy, and also figuring out some of life's like bumps in the road. So yeah, but definitely check out my review video on that. Next up is a poetry collection. This is Physical by Andrew McMillan. Yes. I am not sure where I heard about this book from, because it has won an award. So it was the winner of the 2015 Guardian First Book Award and shortlisted for the 2015 Costa Poetry Award. But I believe I heard about this book from Jen Campbell. It has been in my Amazon basket for the longest time. So I think my boyfriend recently picked up a book for himself and then asked me if I wanted a book. And I was like, yes, let me pick up this poetry collection, because as you guys probably know, I am trying to read more poetry. Well, one of my reading goals is to read a poetry collection a month, and I'm kind of behind on that, but like picking up this and another book that I read has put me back on track. So yeah, and I just definitely really wanted to read this, and I'm so glad that I did. I freaking love this poetry collection. Like, poetry is such a hard thing to describe, but also I think poetry is one of those hard things to really like get on with and gel with. You can read a poetry collection and be like, I do not like this. And I think sometimes that can be really hard, because I feel like poetry a lot of the time is really personal. I know books are really personal as well, like when authors write them, like it's their baby. But I feel like with poetry, there's this sort of raw emotion that comes with it, that you're actually writing, at least a lot of poets anyway, are actually writing about those emotions that they feel, whereas sometimes when authors are writing books, it's just about something that they feel passionate about, but it's actually nothing to do with them. So then I feel really bad when I'm like, oh, that was a shit poetry collection, because I feel like I'm actually shitting on that person and their emotions. But this was wonderful, and I get really happy when I enjoy a poetry collection. This poetry collection deals with the physical, as the title would suggest, but it's more than that. It's more about like the body, sensuality, vulnerability, nakedness. It is all types of like freaking sensual. I really enjoyed this poetry collection, but I will read you the inside so you can actually get a better understanding of what it's about, other than my sort of random description. So it says here, raw and urgent, these poems are hymns to the male body, to male friendship and male love. Muscular, sometimes shocking, but always deeply moving. We are witness here to an almost religious celebration of flesh, a flesh vital with the vulnerability of love and loss, to desire and its departure. In an extraordinary blend of McMillan's own colloquial Yorkshire rhythms with a sinewy, I think that is, metaphysical music, and Tom Gunn's talk and speed, your kiss was deep enough to stand in. The poems in the first collection confront what it is to be a man and interrogate the very idea of masculinity. This is poetry where every instance of the human connection, from the casual encounter to the intimate relationship, becomes redeemable. There is, at the end of everything, a sense of hope. Dispensing with conventional punctuation, the poet is attentive and alert to the quality of breathing, giving the work an extraordinary sense of being vividly poised and present. Okay. Drawing lines that are deft, lyrical, and perfectly pitched from a world of urban dereliction, I think that says. An elegant, stylized, and unfashionable, honest poet, McMillan believes that writing something down keeps it alive, and his eyes and ear are tuned exactly to both the mechanics of the body and the miracles of the heart. I will have to say that section where it says here, from the casual encounter to the intimate relationship, that's definitely what this is about. It has a lot of that casual encounter in the club, sort of longing, wanting, but then very intimate bits of a relationship in which you really care about the person. But yes, this is about the male body, and it's bloody brilliant. Like, I'm just so in love with it. Actually reading the part where it said about the dispensing with conventional punctuation and alerts to the quality of the breathing, there was something in this book that I couldn't figure out what was happening. It was the spaces in between the words, and I now understand that that is to alert you to breathing. Because I kept reading it thinking, why there's so many gaps in this book? Like, I got it with some sort of poetic technique, but I didn't get what the technique was meant to do. And it's so this poetry collection is split into 3 parts. The first part is, I'm going to say, the protest of the physical. No, I think that's the second part. So the first part is physical, the second part is protest of the physical, and the third part is degradation. So it's used throughout the book, but more so in the protest of the physical, which was the section that I didn't enjoy as much. So I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, and it was because I didn't enjoy the middle section as much. However, there were so many brilliant poems in here that I am prepared to read this again and again and just skip over that middle section. I mean, the fact that I might read it again and again might actually mean that I give the middle section more of a chance and I actually understand it a lot more. But talking about poetry techniques, I really enjoyed a lot of the different techniques he used in here. One of the poems is, so he writes a poem and each last line of each stanza, I suppose, is a line taken from another poem. So it says, Saturday Night takes each 4th line from Tom Gunn's Saturday Night. I thought that was really nice. I'm sure that's commonly used in poetry, but because I've fallen out of reading it, like, just seeing that, it just reminded me of how awesome, like, I think poetry is. There is another poem in here that I really enjoyed, which is called Strong Man. I want to read you a couple of lines from it. It says here, my nephew asked if I can bench press him. His mother's new lover can and often does. My nephew who once said my boyfriend was illegal. My nephew with his dad's voice and jaw. My nephew who now protests I had my hand on his balls for the first attempt. I try again. Let both his wicket legs rest against one palm. Put my other to his heart and push. Because what is masculinity if not taking the weight of a boy and straining it from oneself? Here we are, a man holding a boy above himself. Horizontal, like an offering to the Artex feelings. Not even a minor Greek god will see fit to sculpt. I actually just ended up reading the whole poem there, but I really love that. And actually being able to know that those huge gaps of breaks, I was able to take breaks there as well, but I do talk extraordinarily fast, so you might have not heard those breaks. But I really enjoyed this poetry collection. It has such a wonderful balance for me between its sort of overall topics and its overall themes, and the different types of techniques that we use in it and the different kind of poems. So there were short poems, there were longer poems. I just really enjoyed it. I feel like poetry is such a hard thing to like describe, because all you basically want to do is read out all the amazing poems so you can convince people of why this is so amazing. But I think sometimes it's just about that connection that you have with the poem. If you're looking for a poetry collection to read, I would definitely recommend this one, I guess specifically as well because this is Pride Month. I'm not sure when this video will go up, so I might have to edit this out of the video because it won't be Pride anymore. But specifically if you're looking for something that's queer or about gay people, then this is the book for you, because this is absolutely stunning. And so that concludes all the books that I am going to talk about in this video today. I really enjoyed these set of books. Like, it was a good run of reading. There were no books that I was just a bit like, God's sake, can I just put this down? A really good, enjoyable bunch of books. I still can't get over how Proust can change your life, because I just feel like it's a love letter book. But I did really enjoy reading it, and maybe at some point in the future you will see me pick up In Search of Lost Time. But as you guys know, my stack of unread books is already quite big, so maybe not in the near future. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in another video. Bye!